Hey, all right, I think we are live. Hi guys. Hi. Adam, Dan, we're
Hey,
back together finally, the three of us.
who are you people?
Yes. We're all parents, young kids. Summer scheduling is tough, but good to see you guys.
I know it's
Yes,
been a
it is
minute.
good to get back together.
Yeah, it's been so good. So welcome to the Saratoga podcast. We've got lots of good stuff to talk about. We always do when it's the day after a city council meeting. So should we dive right in?
I think so.
You think so? I've got two quiet co-hosts today.
It's not as crazy as Saratoga can usually be, right? It's been
Yeah,
I know.
we had a city council meeting that kind of was uneventful.
I mean,
Robin,
there was some stuff.
you're our city council expert. What did you pick up at the city council meeting?
Well, thank you. Before we really quick, you guys, before we talk city council recap, I just have to say that I'm using a new microphone today. And I don't know if you can tell, but it's got this like color changing situation happening, which is giving me like real 80s. Like I feel like I'm in like a limo in the 80s vibe. So
It's hot.
Oh, we lost you there. Robin, we can't hear you.
Oh, you turned off your.
Yes. Pretty colors, but no sound.
So Dan,
Yes.
let's talk racing season by our city council experts on the we were chatting before, and you said something interesting that really stuck a nerve for me about the timing of the racing season.
wait, can you hear me now?
Oh, Robin's
Yeah.
back. All right, we'll
Yeah.
circle back to racing a little later.
Yeah. Okay, so city council recap from last night. There were a couple public comments. There were also two public hearings, one of which was on short-term rentals. And I guess we are going to have a new document pertaining to how the city is going to address short-term rentals. It sounds like at the next city council meeting, which I think will be good. And I will say, I listened to the pre-agenda meeting as well on Monday. And when Commissioner Moran was talking about the short-term rentals, he was like, people asked us to slow down. So like, no problem. We're going to slow down. And like, he kind of talked about the feedback he had gotten and how they'd adjusted based on that feedback. And I know I was appreciative that he did slow it down and we're being a little bit more deliberate about how the city's going to approach this issue. So that was a good thing. Let's see. There were, again, I'm trying to think of the public comments. Probably the one that stood out the most was Dave Bushin. He came up and touched on a couple issues. One of which was Commissioner Songvi had stated that she feels the city budget needs to increase by almost $20 million over the next 4 years to keep up with the added expenses of Saratoga Springs, which one of the reasons she attributed that to was our population growth. And so Dave Bushin in his public comment actually came up and said, actually, the census data shows that the city of Saratoga Springs has not had any substantial increase in population since 2020. And so I just thought it was an interesting point by Commissioner Songvi, and I'd like to know a little bit more about her rationale, because that is a huge increase. I mean, that's a massive increase in our budget. I think the city budget right now is around 60 or 65 million. I think. Adam, do you know?
No, I think it's
that number seems about accurate. I remember.
I thought it was more. I thought it was closer to 55. But
so it used to be until the last like 2 or 3 years, and they've raised it, fairly significantly to cover like third station costs and whatnot. But still, to add $20 million on that is, like 30, increasing it by 30%. That's significant. I don't know how we would do that. So we shall see if we get more details on that. But so Dave Bushin touched on that. He also, I'm trying to think, he touched on a couple other issues that were salient.
A speaker came up, Robin. Oh, sorry, keep going. And I just, there was
Go
one other.
ahead.
And I don't know who it was. You may, were you there or did you see it, watch it live online?
I'm always at home on my headphones.
Okay. And it was kind of like a clearly racial argument combining short-term rentals and kind of, there was a bit of an attack on Commissioner Cole, and you're all just for the white people is what the gist of the wording was. Can you put some? Can you?
Was that Angela Kaufman?
I'm sorry.
there's a regular speaker at the public comments and during the hearings, whose name I believe is Angela Kaufman. She also goes by Diogenes.
Okay, yes. And she came up twice, I believe, right?
She came up 3 times last night, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so she's extremely outspoken in defense of Saratoga BLM. She also is an extremely outspoken proponent for more low-income housing, the homeless. She's very critical of how the city has handled the homelessness issue. Then she also has a personal situation in the I think it's a mobile home park that she lives in, that she's been like harassed and targeted by the owner of that mobile home park, who wants her to leave, essentially, which has been actually
At least allegedly, right?
Allegedly, yeah, but it's actually pretty well documented in the Times Union. Like, they've covered the legal struggles between the two parties.
Right. I am vaguely familiar with that situation, which is like 4 years running now, it seems.
Yeah. And so I will say with Angela, I often am offended by the words she uses. She sometimes devolves into like cursing and really horrific name calling. However, I will say I respect her commitment to expressing her opinions. I mean, she's literally there at every city council meeting. She does not skip a beat. One of the points she was making about Saratoga BLM was that she was at the last couple rallies they had. She basically invited the police to arrest her because they didn't fill out, the declaration to let the city know that they were having a gathering. And so she wanted to be treated the same way that the organizer of the event was, who was cited by Commissioner Cole. So she touched on that, but she's pretty adept at hitting all the issues.
Yeah, and she lived in short-term rentals. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Adam.
I was going to say, on this note, it's just something I find disturbing about our city council and our city council meetings and this kind of far left movement in our city, is that it really seems to energize through Skidmore College. During the summer, you have somebody show up, but you don't have these large crowds shutting down our meetings like you do during the winter months. And I think you can attribute a lot to the recruiting of Skidmore College kids to come in and disrupt our city government, which as a resident is something I am not fond of. I think it really, again, we've seen our city council meetings shut down before, always in the wintertime, always when Skidmore's in session. And so it's kind of militarizing and indoctrinating our youth to come into our city council meetings. And then in summertime, they're so passionate when they're here. In the summertime, they probably go to their daddy's home in Nantucket and forget about the cause. So,
you can't blame them for that.
What's that?
He said you can't blame them for that.
You can't blame them for that. But again, it's just one thing that bothers me about the Skidmore College does a lot of great things for this community, but the militarized kids they have, or they weaponize them to shut down our city government, really is kind of offensive.
I will say on that note, I do think there's a lot of times when the political science classes, they encourage the students to go to a city council meeting as a means of understanding how local city governments work. And that's kind of like the impetus for why they're sending a class off to a city council meeting. But then, the kids are also, going to protest. They start hearing about these racial issues, and then suddenly, they're the most outspoken critics of the city, and have made outrageous claims like they don't feel comfortable walking from Skidmore down to downtown on Broadway because of like the white supremacy here, which is just an absurd statement to say that walking down North Broadway is dangerous. I mean, it's like the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. But I've also noticed, Saratoga BLM and L's, et cetera, have not been at city council meetings in some time. And I think that that's a specific, to me, I believe that's a specific request that has been made, or they've been told to stop going because of the legal action they're taking against the city. It's my guess that their attorney, Mark Mishler, was like, you got to stop going. It's, we've got all these lawsuits pending.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll see.
Speaking of which, there was actually another lawsuit filed last week, which against like a whole slew of people, including myself, but also including Mayor Safford, Commissioner Cole, Commissioner Montenegro, a federal lawsuit, that's very much kind of in the same spirit of the other lawsuits they filed. But yeah.
Does it not feel that there's a lawsuit a week? in this city, about the city, with the city as a defendant. And I'm not saying the city was wrong, but holy cow, it seems like, and it's an overstatement, but not much of an overstatement. It seems like
Yeah.
every week there's a legal action commenced in the city, and we're going to talk about one of them with the school district down a little bit later in this podcast.
Yeah. Real quick, we have 2 comments here. Bill says that was Diogenes. She lives on stolen land. So yes, that was Angela Kaufman. She does begin all of her comments by saying that she lives on stolen land, meaning we stole it from the Native Americans. Then Bill says, I don't think Skidmore students should vote in city politics. And I know that's actually a lot of people feel that way, that college students shouldn't be voting in a town where they don't have a permanent residency. And I think it's a complicated issue, but I will say the amount of kids who are voting at the Skidmore College ballot location has dropped like significantly. It used to be, there could be 600 votes there, and it would really have a significant impact in the election, in our local elections. Of late, it's been more like 200 maybe votes are cast on the Skidmore College location. So they haven't been as influential in the last at least 2 elections than they have been in recent years. So
yeah, which is surprising considering you have a Skidmore professor on the city council who is pretty entrenched with the Democrats. And then you have some other poli-sci professors who I would say are also pretty entrenched with the Democrats.
It used to be Bob. It was Bob Turner, Professor Turner, Bob Turner, who is a political science professor who really was the one who people would attribute a lot of the turnout at Skidmore College by students.
And Bill, thank you for your comment. Sorry, Adam, but the law is well settled on that they can vote here.
Yeah.
As well as somebody from Brooklyn that lives here 2 months out of the year.
Although there is a requirement for the amount of time, like their residency and the timing of that in terms of dropping off an absentee ballot. Like they have to, I can't remember exactly, but they can't have left, any later than like 30 days after they drop off their absentee ballot. There's some kind of little something built in.
Okay. That I'm not familiar with.
Bill just commented again and said, it's not complicated. They're not city residents. I live half a mile over the city line. I can't vote, but I speak out the same as the students. Yeah, Bill commented last night and had a great public comment. He's always, his contributions to the city council during public comment are always terrific. And I feel his frustration. I would be super pissed off if I lived, so close to the city limits, but couldn't vote necessarily in the city election. So I get that.
It arguably, things happening within the city arguably affect Bill more than it does a college student here for 8 months out of the year for 4 years.
Yeah. Anyhow,
that is the law.
I would say kind of the biggest issue that could have caused some problems last night was another invoice that was due to an attorney, a local attorney, Oscar Schreiber. That was about $1,200 was the total cost. And it was Commissioner Golub who had enlisted Oscar Schreiber as his attorney, I think to deal with the same subpoena that Commissioner Moran rang up his $60,000 bill for. So there was some question as to whether or not the city should move forward with paying Oscar's bill, given they had this temporary restraining order in place on the other legal bill. And so I thought that was going to be a point of contention, but instead it was pulled from the agenda because Mr. Schreiber said he could wait on payment and he, could wait for the city to kind of sort out what its policy was in terms of paying for attorneys and wait for this TRO to play out. So that was a positive thing, for him to do that. And so they pulled it off the entire.
Just to go back on that, on one thing, Commissioner Moran's legal bill being $63,000 for a $1,300 employee, $1,300 an hour attorney, certainly seems excessive. But the rules are the rules, and if either those guys both filed the rules or they both didn't, because Commissioner Golub's bill was much smaller, and for Oscar Schreiber, I don't know what his hourly rate was, but
I think it's about $300 maybe.
Right,
he was charging.
right. So Commissioner Golub, certainly seems more reasonable, but did he go through you either do it the right way or you don't? And so I'm glad that that the Attorney Schreiber was able just to not make them kind of battle this out and kind of go back to the drawing board and figure out what they're going to do.
And that's a good point that was made by one of our guests, Supervisor Madigan. At least I was focusing on the reasonableness, and she said, the key here is the process, and the process clearly does not seem like it was followed. And when this is all said and done, whether it's a month from now or a year from now, I want to know this city has buttoned up this process. Maybe it always has been buttoned up and it wasn't followed. But I want to clearly agree to this is the process going forward. This is what you must do upon receiving a subpoena. And too much willy-nilly going on.
I feel like Supervisor Madigan was pretty clear when she walked us through the process, which is, you get 3 bids. It's a process for RFPs that is already memorialized. I think the reasonableness factor, though, is the trickiest thing, because I do find it unreasonable to hire an attorney for $1,100. I find that to be unreasonable. And the amount of money that was spent seems unreasonable. But again, that's not for me to define, it's for the city council to define, but I think it has to happen.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you, Dan, where it would be vice is black and white, but unfortunately the way it's written is they're afforded reasonable, what is reasonable? That's where a lot of the confusion comes in.
By the way, we have such informed viewers, and Dina chimed in to let us know that Oscar's hourly rate was $4.50. So thank you, Dina. We appreciate that. Anyway, sorry, continue on, Dan. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, well, and at $4.50 an hour with that small bill, it seems like he only did 2.5 hours work. It's interesting that Commissioner Moran needed, even at the high rate, that's a lot of hours. And Commissioner Golub needed 2.5 hours. Kind of gives you pause, right? And that's, I don't want to necessarily cast aspersions. There may be very legitimate reasons for that. But because this whole process kind of, to me, has stink on it, it really does. It's hard not to be skeptical, suspicious, or just wonder, what the heck?
I mean, when you have Commissioner Moran saying that if the city council didn't pay the bill that night, his attorney was going to quit and stop working for him, versus last night when Commissioner Golub said, my attorney doesn't mind waiting for payment. I mean, the situations couldn't be more kind of extreme in terms of how they were presented.
And we talked about this before. We're not, we're not sure if we completely believe. We're not saying he was outright lying, but it seemed like Commissioner Moran was in a different state that night and kind of almost a desperate thing to get this done. I don't know that his attorney, and I pointed out that it could be an ethical violation for him to quit for a slight delay on paying the bill.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's a longer delay now, but that's because the courts got involved.
So the other significant announcement that we kind of, knew was percolating and coming was that Commissioner Golub is resigning from the city council because he was appointed by the governor to be the general counsel for the Department of Corrections and the deputy commissioner, and he can't hold both positions. So he's leaving on August 16th, I believe. And it's, in my opinion, a huge loss for the city and for the city council, because he's someone I would describe as a consensus candidate. He's a consensus builder. He's independent-minded, and he appeals to such a wide variety of people on the political spectrum because he doesn't operate in a partisan manner. And he's really, in my opinion, level-headed, rational, and super smart. So I think it's a big loss for the council.
Yeah, he was. You often see him be the voice of the reason for, especially when the Democrats really controlled the council, and he would kind of pump the brakes on some of the more wackadoo things they would want to get through. Some of the things like this parking program he did, I think in theory it was good. Is the parking, is that in place now? Are people getting ticketed for this?
Yeah. So it is in place now. It began right before the Belmont, and he actually gave us an update on how much revenue has already been generated. Since the parking system was put in place, we've generated $80,000 in revenue for the city. So That was an interesting kind of number to get. And then he also said, which I think is great, in the off season, which I think starts like mid-September, and then it will go through May, when we're not going to have any paid parking, the parking stations will be removed. So there won't be any confusion for people when they're coming in terms of like if they should pay or they shouldn't. Like the whole like muni meter, whatever they're called, they'll be removed. So I think that's a good thing. And
well, that's a big title. That's a big title for him, and good for him. And certainly, we wish him well. You know, we do wish him well. I thought he was a great commissioner as well.
He also got so much done with DPW. You guys, like the amount of projects they completed under his leadership was really impressive. And just on a personal note, I knew Jason. I've known Jason for a couple of years, and I actually asked him to serve on the police reform task force. And I was so grateful that he was willing to step up and do that. He ended up being one of the chairpersons of that task force. And that was a really long, involved, emotional, time-consuming process. And, it didn't all go the way they had hoped at all. It was just, it was kind of a hot mess. I mean, they did an amazing job, but the way it was received by the council wasn't the greatest. And then after that, I asked him if he would again step up and help me write the language for a civilian review board. And having just gone through the whole police task force, he still said yes and worked with me and the city attorney to come up with a proposal for a civilian review board. And then, down the road, he was then appointed to be the DPW commissioner, but he's just served the city in so many different ways. And I just am deeply appreciative for him.
If I could just add, and I'll be mentioning him later, I concur with everything you said. Adam, especially the word reasonable. Everyone describes him that way. He's going to be missed. I hope we'll talk about his replacement in a second, but his decency, his knowledge, his intelligence. He's a longtime attorney, Ivy League educated. He is going to be missed on this council.
Yeah, you guys, I worked on his campaign when he, after he was appointed and he had to run again for election. And the kickoff event that we did in July that year for his campaign, I've never seen a more diverse group of people in terms of politics in one space, to the point where I was sweaty because we had such extremes, from the right and left, everybody came. And I just thought it was such a tremendous reflection of how he could bring people together. So the Department of Corrections is lucky to have him. And I am super happy for him in his professional career because this is a huge accomplishment. So.
Well, that brings us into the how do they fill the role?
Yeah. How do they fill the role?
Yeah, our city council is going to be tasked with finding somebody to fill that spot, which we saw happen when Commissioner Saratoga unfortunately passed away. But at that point, the city council was comprised of all Democrats, so it was an in-house appointment. Now you have two Democrats, a Republican, and a registered Democrat, and Commissioner Cole, who really seems to caucus with Mayor Safford and the Republicans. So now you have to have a consensus candidate in the middle there, which brings up some difficulties and a lot of interesting options. I wonder what you guys' thoughts are on that.
My first thought is just I'm very disappointed with the way that the city council has already approached this, and that Commissioner Songvi last night said, this basically said this is going to be a 2-2 vote. So we're going to have to figure out how we're going to do this. And I was like, you're already jumping to the conclusion that you're going to vote in partisan blocks. You're not even pretending to be open to the possibility that you might not vote, in these little allied groups. And it was just and Commissioner Moran kind of made statements to that same effect at the pre-agenda meeting about this kind of majority that they currently have. And John and Tim are in the minority and And it's the city council, when we were on it and for many years before, didn't vote in a partisan way. And there weren't these groups of people who were entrenched together and always voted the same way. It just didn't operate like that. And so it's sad to me that this is kind of their mindset already.
In fairness to her, and that's my mindset. I've had private discussions exactly to that effect. That is how I view it with the reality. And she did follow that up in the Gazette by saying we need to find my words, I can't remember her exact words, but a middle of the road candidate that will appeal to both sides.
But if you're on the council, don't you at least pretend like you have an open mind? Just pretend. I mean, come on.
It does.
It's so apparent to all of us. We'd all chuckle, and
but it's so disappointing. It's like, you guys, like, rise above. You know what I mean? Like, rise above. It was the same thing when there was kind of some nitpicking. John Safford had on his agenda last night this issue of working out the process for reasonableness and hiring and paying attorney fees, right? And there was some complaining from the other city council members that the mayor's office hadn't approached them to get their feedback on what this might be. And I just thought to myself, yes, that is disappointing in that, you know, the mayor's deputy should have reached out to the other commissioners to get their feedback and whatever. But at the same time, if you have thoughts and feelings and opinions about something, just walk down the goddamn hall, knock on the door, and initiate the conversation on your own. Don't just sit around waiting for some like formal invitation. And so the only commissioner who had given their kind of feedback on this issue was Commissioner Golub. And at the pre-agenda meeting, he was like, I just want to point out that I actually approached the mayor's office about this because I wanted to go through it with them. And so then they were totally open to that. And I was able to give my feedback. And so I just kind of hate this kind of like martyr mentality of like, I was sitting in my office and no one invited me. So like, I didn't get to like give my feedback. Like, come on, people.
It is, communications are a two-way street. But the mayor needs to do his part. And to your point, Robin, the commissioners need to do their part. They should both be bumping into each other in the hall, approaching their offices.
I will say, you know, this is such an important spot because this is going to be the vote that can sway this is going to be the deciding vote for a lot of issues. Yeah. And I think the biggest issue out there right now that is unfortunately, or not unfortunately, but is stalled by the courts is Commissioner Moran's legal bills. So I think Commissioner Moran has a big drive to get somebody in that spot who would caucus with the Democrats, because that theoretically that's going to come back in front of the city council again to vote on to be paid. That's a big number. So yeah, Commissioner Moran's probably feeling the pressure a little bit to find a replacement in there who will help him get those legal bills paid, which I think ultimately should be paid. I mean, but we can have that conversation later.
So should we go over how this happened after Commissioner Sirocco passed, which was they appointed a committee of people who interviewed any interested candidate, and the interviews were live streamed so the public could watch. And then the committee made a recommendation to the city council as to who they thought the best candidate would be. And they recommended Commissioner Golub. But then the city council still had to vote to approve that appointee. And so they were talking about how they would approach this last night. And it sounds like maybe they want to do the interviews themselves and not have like a committee do them. But that they would maybe do kind of the same process so the public could see the interviews and it could be a transparent process.
Yeah,
I'm happy those will be recorded again or available for public view. I would almost love to see someone come forward that's not has not held office before, but has a stature in this community, but would only do it until the election. I'm interim. I'm not going to run again for the rest of the term or next term. I will just help you get through this hump. That way it theoretically at least takes some of the politics out of it.
Theoretically, but I actually think that's very disruptive for the department to have to go through so many transitions in terms of who the commissioner is.
Well, it will be anyway, because there's an election. There's no guarantee the appointee would get reelected.
Right. True. I personally think that it's going to have to be someone who is like a relative unknown in politics here. Except for I have one other person that I would love to talk about, although I don't know if he wants me to talk about it on this podcast because he might be one of my co-hosts. But anyway, the people whose names I've heard floated are people like, and by the way, this is all just rumor and conjecture and what people are, chirping. I've heard Gordon Boyd's name thrown out. I've heard the McTighe's name thrown out. I've heard our old city attorney, Vince Delanardis' name thrown out. I've heard Chuck Marshall, who's on the planning board, his name thrown out. Again, I have no idea if these people are interested. This is just kind of what people are chirping about. And all, a lot of those folks, I think, come with a lot of political baggage, are very partisan, and I don't think would be necessarily people I would describe as consensus candidates. I would love to see, I don't know, maybe an Adam Israel in there. I think he would be awesome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah, I don't know if that politics
I would love that too.
I'd have to resign from the show, so I don't know if that would. I missed you guys too much.
Forget it.
But yeah, I mean, certainly, I would say again, somebody who is independent. Robin, you had run as a Republican before, but if you look at what Wendy in the Times Union just wrote an article on this, and she interviewed Skip Scirocco's son Anthony and Gordon Boyd, who both kind of expressed an interest in the position. It would be very difficult getting those two names are very entrenched with political parties. So the trick is you got to get the third vote, right? You got to get you got to get Manita or Dylan or both to jump onto somebody the Republicans put up, or you got to get John or Tim to jump over to somebody that Dylan and Manita put up. And it's not many people. It's true. There's not many people who kind of fit that bipartisan, independent slot that they're going to have to put in there.
But they do exist, right? Can we agree they do exist? Oh, sorry, Adam, to interrupt. I thought you were done. I believe some of those people do exist, and I'm wondering if you guys agree that there is a consensus candidate out there, and it's this council, the four of them. It's their responsibility to find that person and appoint that person, so the position does not go vacant going forward.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's really appealing to not have to run an election to get on the city council. To be appointed versus go through a whole campaign is super appealing. And so I think there's going to be a decent amount of people interested, and hopefully someone who hasn't been involved in local politics, but has a skill set that, applies to DPW, but also has the people skills to be engaged and functional in the city council. Maybe, who we don't know about pops up. By the way, our friend Bill is piping in and he says, he'll do it. And he says, yes, me. And Bill, I totally agree with you. You're just going to have to maybe come live with me for a while so we can get you a residency.
That's the problem, Bill. You already said you lived outside the
I know.
The
I don't have an extra bedroom, but my kids have room in their bedroom. So you just have to be cool with a bunk bed situation.
Wait, wasn't there a question years back of the Commissioner of Public Works if he did indeed even live in the city at the time?
What's
Do you
that?
recall that? There was an issue maybe 20 years ago when I first moved here of whether the Commissioner
McKay had a horse farm.
Okay. I don't remember who it was. I just remember there was some scuttlebutt or accusations anyway, obviously unconfirmed.
Yeah.
We have another comment from John Kaufman, who says, Jason Golub's behavior at the last two meetings was deeply troubling. He seriously misrepresented state law and, as Dan observed, bullied the mayor. At this last meeting, I didn't think he was rude to the mayor, but that's just my observation. Dan, maybe you have.
Well, 2 meetings ago, yeah, but I mean, we're talking about his body of work here. For he's served about the equivalent of one full term based on the partial term last time and what he served so far. From his body of work, I think he was reasonable, decent. He's had some things I've disagreed with. And including that point, I thought he 2 meetings back. I didn't like what went on, but I'm looking at his entire body of work, and he has my respect, and I think we're going to miss him.
Bill also is confirming what you guys are saying. Yes, he had about McTighe. Yes, he had a house he rented out on Clinton Street, and it was McTighe. Bill, you've got all the knowledge, buddy. I think you're going to have to consider coming to live with Robin on Caroline Street for a little bit so we can appoint you to this position.
He'll be our go-to guest host.
The other thing that there is a lot of confusion around, and I'm still waiting for it to be clarified, is that from what I understood from New York State election law, you would have to resign before August 5th for the state to have time to put your name on the ballot for this fall's election cycle. And
Correct.
So, but it's incongruous with our city charter, which says that the appointee is only to serve out the remaining calendar year. And then there's supposed to be a special election. So the two things are they conflict. So I don't understand if we're going to have someone that we're going to be voting for this November or the following November. Will the appointee be there for a year and change or just, a matter of months?
Well, can there be a special election in January, for instance?
That was my other question. Does it have to be the first Tuesday in November? Can we have a special election another time? I don't.
Which is costly and not that expensive, but there is an added cost because
Right.
gear it all up again. I
Right.
don't know
So,
the answers to those questions.
me neither. And I've tried contacting a bunch of people, and whether it's someone, at the BOE, like, because basically I haven't found anyone who knows our charter and New York State law enough to tell me what they think is going to happen. So we'll keep you guys posted if we hear, but because it does make a big difference. Someone being appointed for, a year and 3 or 4 months versus someone who's just appointed from like September through December.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah,
also,
that will bear watching. And
Yeah. Wait, hold on. Sorry. More importantly, if there was an election this fall, it would not allow for there to be a third party line like One Saratoga, which was such a critical factor in who got elected the last election cycle. It would just be a straight Republican versus Democrat, and the Democrat wins in that scenario. Like, there's no scenario in which a Republican will win. So whoever the Democrats, would run would really be the presumptive winner, even before the, election day came.
Well, the minor established parties would still have a presence, but I think what you're saying was that would not make, chances are that would not make a difference. The
You
conservatives.
don't have very minor established parties anymore on the ballot. It's
You've got 3 of them, I believe, right?
It's
The
the
conservative,
Green.
and working families.
yeah,
the
Green
Green
is gone.
Working families, yeah.
Well, just those
And
two.
Yeah. So they wouldn't make a difference in this case.
Yeah, they don't move the needle.
10
Yeah.
years ago,
Well,
there might have been
Rob,
8
to get back to what you're
parties.
saying, yes, traditionally the last couple election cycles, we've seen Democrats hold a huge advantage in the voting rolls. But I will, and we like to stay away from national politics here. It would be interesting because they're saying New York State nationally could be a battleground state right now, meaning that you might have this national election coming up that Democrats might not be. Now, again, this is Saratoga. We have some of the most energized Democrats there are. But it would be interesting to see how that would affect a local race like this, because traditionally they're not held on presidential election years.
Well, I will say Saratoga County went blue in 2020 when President Biden was first elected, and that was a really big deal. And so I hope for the same thing this election cycle. And I also know that last year there was a lot of smaller, congressional races and state level races where Democrats really dropped the ball and Republicans did gain some seats. But I think that was a real wake up call to a lot of the New York State Democrats to get their shit together. So I don't think New York is close to being a battleground state yet. I mean, I think we're pretty deep blue.
I agree. I won't buy it. And there'll be other states that move into the battleground realm long before New York does. I think Joe Biden could be dead and this state would still elect him.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I would vote for a dead Joe Biden. 100%.
And that's not a shot at picking a candidate. This is a Democratic state.
It's a possibility. It is a possibility, though.
I think the last Republican to win this state might have been Ronald Reagan.
Adam likes to say this because he knows it gets under my skin. We love to whatever. We love to have these little debates.
A little banter, a little back and forth.
Yeah, a little back and forth. At any rate, it will be really interesting. And as soon as we know like what the mechanism is for people to contact City Hall and say they're interested and sign up for one of these interviews, we'll let people know, because the more choices, the better for the city,
I wish we had a great candidate in mind right now, and maybe we do in the back of our heads. We're not going to share it right now. I don't have a eureka candidate. I would love to have one though.
It's going to be interesting to see how this pans out, because it is going to be very difficult to find that somebody who fits that slot of that both sides can agree on.
I'm just going to say that I know Adam likes to poke me with his kind of Republican statements every now and then, but I think that Adam Israel is incredible at reaching out to both sides of the aisle. He's very kind of neutral in his city politics in terms of partisanship. And he has experience that's like directly applicable to DPW. And I think he would do a great job. So that's my Adam Israel pitch, whether he wants it or not.
I know. I appreciate it. I think always as an independent, you kind of fly by yourself and just have your co-host to support you. So I think probably that's where I'm at right now. And I think both parties are trying to maneuver just to get there, somebody who they see as an operative in there. So, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we will see what happens. So just want to bring up, this isn't like super exciting, but yesterday's storm was freaking wild, you guys. And I'm only bringing it up because I feel like it's gotten really dark outside. We're about to have another big storm. How did you all fit? I got that alert on my phone that we should all, seek shelter. And of course, the first thing I did was walk out to the porch with the kids to watch the storm like an idiot. But it was wild.
It was. It's my first storm of that nature since I've been a parent. And if it was just me, I would have been about my day. I'm sure I would have. It was so bad. Even if I wasn't a parent, it would have caught me. But my point is, as a parent, I was worried, and I was considering going in the basement with tornado warnings and so forth, which is a step up from a tornado watch, right? And okay, big deal. Those are words. But then you look outside and you see trees getting pushed sideways and then going back the other way. And then the rain coming down. My driveway was a river, as probably yours were too. It was for a good 10 minutes. It was, I'll use the word scary.
It was wild. But
I have 2 points on this. One, and I don't want to one up you guys, but in 2017, I was living in the Caribbean on St. Thomas. And we were hit September 6, 2017 by Hurricane Irma, direct Category 5, and then 2 weeks later, Hurricane Maria, Cat 5. So I've been through 2 Category 5 hurricanes in the span of 2 weeks. So I wasn't really worried about this tornado warning. But I will say, Dan, I completely empathize with what you said. My son is at Camp Ginjacook right now. The campers were all out on there. So there were 300 campers kind of scattered in campsites throughout the Adirondacks at this camp, and with no real, there's no real shelter there. There's no basements. Obviously, you're surrounded by trees and trees are the scary part for lightning strikes and for falling over and possibly injuring a kid. So I was very nervous, but I will say I'm a big proponent of social media. So I was on some local Lake George boating groups, and they were reporting back the weather conditions. And then there were a couple of boaters who actually went out and found the kids at the campsites and reported back.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
it's complete strangers too. I mean, one of the gentlemen, the only reason, you kind of do a little social media dive on who these people are going to look for your kids. But one was the owner of Hoffman's Car Wash. I just saw in his profile. But immediately after the storm, they were on their boats going to offer help. So anyway,
that's awesome.
That'll be my early jeers to those boaters who went out there and helped locate the kids on the mountain. But you're right, Dan. As a parent, it was scary for a little while.
It was. I will say though, it did seem to be more of like a wind and rain event. There wasn't a ton of like lightning and thunder. I thought the lightning and thunder was like fairly mild compared to.
It was, but then you look at News Channel 13, and they had. I don't know if you saw this graph they had up, but they had like lightning strikes, and that's what if you go on. Lightning strikes, it looked like the whole sky was blowing up, but it's all proportion, right? They're putting like these little lightning bolts on the map. That is lightning bolts to scale would probably be 3 miles long, but it looks like on the map there's 1 billion lightning strikes. So it's just that was a little scary too. But yeah, you're right. There was a lot of rain.
Yeah.
This morning, Nelson Avenue between I think it was Crescent Ave between Nelson and Broadway was shut down because of trees falling. I know there was some rerouting of this for last night's SPAC concert because trees falling. So they had quite a bit of cleanup to do, it seemed. And I heard up north it was that much worse.
My kids are total goofballs, and when we get heavy rain, they think it's hysterical to go out in their bathing suits and take a shower in the rain. Like they'll bring shampoo with them and like shower on the sidewalk. And so last night I had to be like, no showering. This is not a shower storm. Inside, or at least on the porch with me. No outdoor shower situation happening. Anyhow, I think we have, we have another comment from Ginny who says, a few minutes late, however, run, Adam, run.
I'm running away as fast as I can, Ginny. But thank you, Ginny. I appreciate the kind words.
So did you guys do anything exciting for the beginning of track season?
Adam brought this up earlier that I was saying with you guys, maybe off camera. The opening of track season came seemingly 48 hours after the end of the Belmont. It's like I didn't catch my breath. I wasn't that excited for it to come. There always were 2 summers here, right? Pre-track and track. And boy, that pre-track time, that was blurred. That was too quick. I wasn't ready for track season. I think people in the racing industry know that. They kind of felt the same thing. The numbers are, up and down. They're okay. They're not dismal. But I just hope we never, next year, I forget when it'll fall. It might start a little later next year because it's an early start on the calendar. That's why it was July 11th this year, because it'll end early on September 2nd, Labor Day. But I just wasn't that excited about it this year. I will be. I need August to come.
I never thought being in the hotel business here. The longer the season, the better, the higher rate you get. But I felt that same way. Of just all of a sudden it's on you. It's opening weekend. It's opening day, and you're just not quite ready for it. You're still, in the early. You feel like you're in the early parts of summer, still getting getting the kids to camp and stuff. I wasn't ready for the start of the season. I haven't been, and I'm a huge racing advocate. I love going to the races. I haven't been yet, so I agree with Dan on that.
Yeah, my just observation. You guys know where I live. I live on Caroline Street between Henry and Circular, so I'm basically I can somersault to the bars. I'm so close. In previous opening days, opening weekends, I'm on the board of Saratoga Sponsor a Scholar. We would have the Saratogian parking lot on Friday night to park cars in, and we would receive the money from it, whatever. What I'm trying to say is I would be assigned to take the money from midnight to 2 a.m. or something for Sponsor Scholar. So I'd be out watching, what was going on opening weekend. And we used to have the Hats Off Festival, and it was freaking jammed. Downtown was shoulder to shoulder. It was so crowded, so busy. There was so much energy in the air. Sometimes it was a little too much, and I would bolt home and lock all my doors and windows. But there was no way you could not know it was opening weekend of the track. This year, I actually didn't realize the track had opened until the day after, because I thought it was happening the following week. And I just didn't observe any of that kind of excitement, energy, crowds. I didn't see any of it. And I think that's, there's a lot of factors that play into that, but I don't love it. I don't think I would like to see the crowds and the energy, and makes me a little nervous when I don't.
Perhaps next year, Naira, since they're having the Beaumont here again, maybe they can delay the track opening by 1 week. And even if they have to go a week into September, a week after Labor Day, which I think would be great to attract some new fans, aka college students, to the sport, that might behoove them to do just that, because it was too quick, and it'll already be too quick next year. Yeah.
On the other hand, my daughter got a permit to sell, water outside the track. And it was kind of an interesting comparison, because she made $450 on one day during the Belmont. She got there at 6 a.m, and she stayed till almost 7 p.m. So she was there for a really long time.
Wow.
I know. Versus
that is a worker.
She's a hustler. Versus this past Saturday, she was only there from I'm going to say 10 to about 3. And she made just about $100. But I was it was kind of an interesting comparison. You know what I mean? The two. And I think it actually does speak to the crowd, and it was a big difference. But she was thrilled one way or the other. I was borderline jealous of how much freaking cash she had. So I might have to do a part-time hustle selling up by the track with her. If you see me shilling water, throw me a bone. Anyhow, should we go into our cheers and jeers, guys?
Let's do it.
Sure.
Yeah, what do you think? Cheers and jeers time? Yes? No?
I can kick it off if you'd like, or if someone else wants to go, they can go.
You kick it off, Dan.
Okay. And not to keep reiterating, a cheer and a thank you to Jason Golub for his time on the city council. We talked about him a lot, so I won't go too deep into it. But you know what? I was thinking I cannot find. I wrote down earlier I cannot find a critic of him, but then John Kaufman wrote earlier. But I don't know if that. I don't know where that doesn't mean John's completely against him, but it's just maybe a recency bias on John's part. But I felt he has no, or at least very few critics. My jeer is to this damn system we've got that pays 14 grand a year at a static rate, no matter what happens. Inflation could go up 40%. It's still 14 grand a year. That needs to be addressed. I know there are some irons in the fire to address it, but I haven't seen that yet. That needs to be addressed. And then they need to index. They should double the salary in my book, then index it to one of the city bargaining units so that they never have to revisit that again. If the if the largest city bargaining unit gets a 4% raise, city council gets a 4%.
And you're just talking. So I don't know if you're saying the city council salaries right now.
The city council salaries that force a reasonable, intelligent person like Jason Golub to move on, and even doubling the salary may not have made a difference for him. He's raising some children and so forth, but it still needs to be addressed. It's still a problem. It's still part of the problem. They pay it's poultry. And Robin, you know that better than anybody.
It's such a no-brainer to solve that problem. All you do is appoint a committee of people who understand finance, understand these issues, and have that committee make a recommendation to the city council. So then it doesn't become this like politically toxic issue. Because obviously for a politician to suggest that they get paid more and like suggest their own raise is not really a good look, especially if you're trying to get reelected. So hand it off to a committee, let the committee make a recommendation and freaking solve this issue, because making $220 a week is bullshit. It's just bullshit. Anyway, sorry.
Your daughter makes twice that in a day.
Well, speaking of my daughter, she literally just walked in. She just walked in. You can come over here, Allie, and say hi. Can I do my quick cheer and jeer? There's my little hustler. Where is she? Oops.
Hi.
Hi, Alice.
There's my Bills fan.
Yeah.
Your mom was saying how good you were doing selling water by the track. So congratulations.
Congratulations. Yeah. Well, and listen, the work ethic you showed, oh my gosh, that's awesome. Good for you. You are going to succeed. You are going to succeed, kid.
Thank you.
Someone's got to pay for me in my old age. So yeah, my eggs are in this basket. So my cheer is, I think this is so awesome. Something the school district is doing. The school district actually has a food truck, and students can get free summer meals Monday through Friday through mid-August. And they have these food trucks at 2 locations. One is at Maple Avenue Middle School from 10:30 to 11 a.m. and then at Jefferson Terrace from 11:15 to 12 p.m. And that's 5 days a week. And the food truck, I don't know if you can see it, but it's so cute. And so students can get free meals there. And I just think that is so fantastic, because food issues during summer vacation, that is a real issue for a lot of kids, because they can't get their breakfast and lunch or take home a snack pack from school every day. Food insecurity becomes a significant issue. So I just think this is such an awesome thing that our school district has done. And I hope that kids who need it and families who need it see it and take advantage of it. My jeer, oh God, I had a good jeer, you guys. I forget my jeer. I always have something.
I already did one cheer. I don't have a jeer. We'll come back to you, Robin, if you think of it. I have 2. I'll do another cheer. And this might get you. But my cheer is to Times Union reporter Wendy Libator, who she did 2 articles today. One about Jason Golub leaving. She interviewed a Republican and a Democrat, and was actually kind of normal in the article. You didn't see an obvious bias. I mean, everything she's done to date has had a clear bias. This just seemed to be a normal reporter reporting on a normal local election issue. And then she also reported on the Commissioner Moran and the city is being sued by the school district. And again, she interviewed the mayor, she interviewed Commissioner Moran, she interviewed the attorney for the school, and didn't put a spin or a bias on it. So congratulations on bringing back some normalcy in reporting that shows a little bit of integrity with your work. So cheers to you, Wendy. Keep it up.
It really speaks to her history of journalism that's what it took for you to give her like this huge enthusiastic cheer. It doesn't take a lot, right?
No, it's a little sad, but let's keep it like a graphic. There we go.
Keep it up,
I did notice one example of what you're talking about, Adam, and I caught this the same thing in a different article a couple weeks back. I'm like, wow, this was balanced.
Oh, really? So this is I've been away for a while, so maybe this is the new. Maybe this is the new TU spin. So There's no
I
state,
mean,
so great.
maybe New York will be a battleground state, and maybe this will be the new TU.
I looked. Biden's. Listen, I'm not giving my thoughts or opinions on the national race. I'm just stating fact, right? The fact is that Biden's only leading Trump by 8 points in New York State, which is pretty. I think he won it by 30 points last time. So again,
Yeah, I would ask you to look back and see what the polls were saying before the election date in 2000, because I just think polls are bullshit. But that's
they are. But if you want to go down that road, polls traditionally do not favor certainly Republican, but certainly Donald Trump. Nobody wants to admit they're voting for Donald Trump, right? Like who wants to go down that road?
Some are rabid about saying
Yeah, but not in New York.
Saratoga Springs.
Not in Saratoga Springs, but
Not in Saratoga
anyway, no.
Springs.
But I will say, Robin, I agree. I do not think New York State will be a battleground state. I think Biden will, in the end, win it pretty easily as long as he's alive.
Yes.
Maybe I don't know, but it is going to be close, and it's going to be interesting to see how that affects down ballot races. So we'll see in November.
I agree, and thank you for conceding that, just because it makes me feel good. So, I'm going to skip my jeer because let's just stay positive. Guys, we will be back here in 2 weeks again after the next city council meeting. In the meantime, thank you everyone for watching. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You'll get an alert every time we go live. You can find us on all the social platforms or wherever you find your favorite podcast. So thanks, everybody.
All right. Stay charming.
All right. Bye, guys.